You know, there's something about December that makes you feel everything just a little bit deeper, doesn't it? The cold air biting at your cheeks, the lights twinkling on every street corner, the smell of pine and cinnamon drifting through the neighborhood. It all brings back memories, the kind that sit heavy in your chest and make you wonder where all the years went. I'm 70 years old now, and I've seen 70 Decembers come and go, but this one was different. This one broke something inside me that I didn't even know could break anymore. My name? Well, that doesn't matter much, does it? What matters is that I'm somebody's mother, somebody's grandmother, and for the longest time I thought that was enough. I thought being needed was the same thing as being loved. Boy, was I wrong about that. It was December 18th, just a week before Christmas, and I was in my kitchen. Where else would I be, right? Kneading dough for the sugar cookies my grandkids always begged for. The ones with the little red and green sprinkles that get everywhere and stick to your socks for weeks afterward. My hands were covered in flour, my back was aching something fierce from standing too long, and I could feel that familiar throb in my knees that the doctor keeps telling me is just arthritis, nothing to worry about. Like pain is something you're supposed to just get used to when you hit a certain age. But I was smiling, you know, because I was thinking about their faces, all 8 of them, my beautiful grandchildren, lighting up when they saw those cookies on Christmas Eve. That's what kept me going, that's what always kept me going. The thought that maybe, just maybe, all this effort meant something to somebody. Where are you watching this from, sweetheart? Are you in your kitchen right now, too? Maybe you're sitting on your couch with a blanket? Or lying in bed scrolling through your phone because sleep won't come easy tonight. I want you to know something. I'm right here with you, and whatever you're feeling, whatever weight you're carrying on your shoulders, I understand it. I really do. Because we're all just trying to matter to someone, aren't we? We're all just hoping that the people we love see us, really see us, for who we are and not just what we can do for them. So there I was, rolling out cookie dough, when I heard voices drifting in from the living room. My daughter Sarah's voice, clear as a bell, and my son Mark's deeper rumble mixing in with hers. They'd both come by that afternoon with their spouses, supposedly to help me get ready for Christmas, but they'd been sitting on the couch for the past hour scrolling through their phones while I did all the work. Nothing new there, really. I'd gotten used to it over the years, the way they'd drop by and let me fuss over them, make them coffee, listen to their problems, watch their kids whenever they needed a break, which seemed to be more and more often these days. I never complained, though. What kind of mother complains about spending time with her family, right? But then I heard Sarah say something that made my hand stop moving, made the rolling pin freeze halfway across the dough, made my heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with my blood pressure medication. She said, and I'll never forget the casual way she said it, like she was discussing what to have for lunch. So we're all agreed then? We'll leave all 8 kids with Mom on Christmas Eve and head up to that resort in the mountains for a few days. God knows we need the break, and she loves having them anyway. It's perfect. Perfect. Mark agreed, and I could hear the relief in his voice, the kind of relief you feel when you've just figured out how to solve a problem that's been nagging at you. She'll have them all here for Christmas morning. We'll come back on the 27th, and we'll actually get to relax for once. No screaming, no fighting over toys, no cooking massive meals. Just peace and quiet and maybe some actual sleep. Exactly. Sarah laughed. Actually laughed. And I heard the sound of her slapping Mark's arm playfully. And you know, Mom, she'll go all out for them. She always does. They'll have the time of their lives, and we'll finally get that vacation we've been talking about. Win-win. Win-win. Those words echoed in my head as I stood there. Flour on my hands, dough getting warm under my palms, my breath coming shorter and shorter like someone had just wrapped a band around my chest and pulled it tight. Win-win for who exactly? Certainly not for me, the 70-year-old woman with arthritis and high blood pressure and legs that swelled up like balloons if I stood too long, who was apparently expected to single-handedly watch 8 children, ranging from age 3 to 12, for 3 entire days while her children, her grown children who had plenty of energy and resources, went off to a spa resort to relax. Had they asked me? Had anyone thought to pick up the phone? Or walk into this kitchen where I'd been working all afternoon and say, "Hey Mom, would you mind watching all the kids for Christmas so we can take a vacation?" No, they hadn't. Because asking would have meant acknowledging that I was a person with my own plans, my own energy limits, my own life. And somewhere along the way, I don't know exactly when it happened, maybe it was gradual like water wearing down stone, I'd stopped being a person to them and started being a resource. A free babysitter. A cook. A maid. A problem solver. Somebody who existed solely to make their lives easier, with no thought given to what it cost me. Are you feeling this with me right now? That tightness in your chest, that burn behind your eyes? Have you ever felt invisible in your own life, like you could disappear tomorrow and the only thing people would miss is what you did for them, not who you are? If you have, then you know exactly what I felt standing in that kitchen, listening to my children plan their vacation around my unpaid, unappreciated labor. And if you haven't, well, count yourself lucky, sweetheart, because it's a special kind of pain that comes with that realization. My hands were shaking as I wiped the flour off on my apron, as I turned off the oven. Those cookies could wait, or maybe they'd never get made at all, and walked quietly toward the hallway. I didn't confront them, didn't storm into the living room with righteous anger blazing in my eyes like some movie heroine. I just couldn't do it. Instead, I went to my bedroom, closed the door softly behind me, and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall where photos of my family smiled back at me from their frames. Every birthday, every graduation, every holiday for the past 40 years, I was in maybe 3 of those photos, always the one behind the camera, always the one making sure everyone else's memories got captured while mine just slipped away unrecorded. For 40 years, I'd put everyone else first. When my husband died 8 years ago, my God, has it really been 8 years? I thought maybe things would change, thought maybe my kids would step up and take care of me the way I'd always taken care of them. But instead it got worse. I became even more useful to them, even more available, because now I didn't have anyone else to consider. I was just Mom, good old reliable Mom. Always there with a hot meal and a listening ear and strong enough hands to fold endless loads of laundry and lift babies and stir pots and scrub floors and never, ever complain about any of it. That night, December 18th, a date I'll remember for the rest of my life, I made a decision. I'd spent $900 on ingredients and preparations for the Christmas dinner I'd planned. A massive feast with turkey and ham and all the sides, enough to feed my entire family with leftovers for days. I'd spent another $1,200 on gifts for everyone, carefully chosen presents that I'd picked out months ago, wrapped lovingly with paper I'd saved from last year, because why waste money on new wrapping paper when the old stuff was perfectly good? I'd spent hours, weeks really planning this Christmas, trying to make it special, trying to make it perfect, trying to be enough. But sitting on that bed, looking at those photos, listening to the continued murmur of voices from the living room as my children finalized their vacation plans without me, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. I would never be enough. Not because I wasn't doing enough, Lord knows I was doing more than enough, but because they would never see me as anything more than what I could provide. And maybe, just maybe, that was partly my fault for never teaching them to see me differently, for never demanding to be treated as a person instead of a service. So I picked up my phone, my hands were still shaking, and I started making calls. First, I called the grocery store and canceled the massive Christmas order. Yes, I'm sure, I told the confused clerk. Yes, all of it. I won't be needing it after all. Then I called my friend Paula, the one person in my life who'd always treated me like I mattered, who'd been telling me for years that my kids were taking advantage of me. Paula, I said, and my voice cracked on her name. Do you still have that condo available, the one by the beach that you've been trying to rent out? Of course, she said, and I could hear the concern in her voice. Margaret, what's wrong? What happened? Nothing's wrong, I told her. And it was the first lie I'd told in a long time that felt like the truth. Everything's finally right. I'm taking a vacation, Paula. For Christmas. Just me. Can I use the condo? What would you do, sweetheart, if you were in my shoes right then? Would you stay and let them use you one more time? Tell yourself it's what family does. Swallow down the hurt and put on a smile? Or would you choose yourself for once, even if it meant disappointing everyone who'd come to depend on you? The next morning, December 19th, I woke up before dawn. Old habits die hard. And my body still believed it needed to be up early to start coffee and breakfast for whoever might drop by. But this time, instead of heading to the kitchen, I pulled out my old suitcase from the back of the closet, the one I hadn't used since that trip my husband and I took to Niagara Falls 23 years ago. It smelled like dust and memories, and as I laid it open on my bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Excitement mixed with terror, like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing you might actually jump. I packed slowly, carefully, choosing clothes I hadn't worn in forever because where would I wear them, right? Who gets dressed up to babysit grandkids or cook dinner for ungrateful children? But I had a nice blue dress that made my eyes look brighter, and a soft yellow sweater that my husband always said made me look like sunshine, and some comfortable pants that weren't stained with spaghetti sauce or covered in dog hair from my daughter's golden retriever that she always brought over without asking. I packed my medications, the blood pressure pills, the arthritis pills, the calcium supplements, all the little reminders that I'm not 20 anymore. And I packed the book I'd been trying to read for 6 months but never had time for because someone always needed something. Can you hear your heart beating right now watching this? Mine was pounding so hard I thought it might break right through my ribs. Because this wasn't just about a vacation. This was about drawing a line in the sand after 70 years of letting everyone walk all over me. This was about saying enough, when everything in my upbringing told me that good mothers never say enough, never stop giving, never choose themselves over their families. Around 10 in the morning, Sarah called. Perfect timing, really, because I just zipped up my suitcase and called a cab to take me to the car rental place. Hey, Mom, she chirped, sounding chipper and completely oblivious to the bomb I'd overheard her drop yesterday. Just calling to confirm Christmas plans. We'll drop the kids off around 4 on Christmas Eve, okay? Make sure you have plenty of snacks and maybe rent some movies for them. Oh, and Tommy's been really picky about food lately, so maybe avoid anything with vegetables. Sarah, I interrupted her, and my voice sounded strange even to my own ears, quiet but firm like steel wrapped in velvet. I won't be here for Christmas. Silence. Complete, total silence on the other end of the line, the kind of silence that feels heavy and dangerous like the pause before thunder after lightning splits the sky. Then, what? What do you mean you won't be here? Mom, you're always here for Christmas. Where would you even go? To the beach, I said simply, and I could almost hear her brain struggling to process this information, trying to fit it into her understanding of who I was. trying to make sense of this sudden deviation from 40 years of predictable behavior. I'm taking a vacation. By myself. I'll be back after the new year. But Mom, we need you. The panic in her voice would have broken my heart a month ago, would have made me backtrack and apologize and assure her that of course I'd be there. Don't worry, I'd never let you down. But today, standing in my bedroom with my suitcase at my feet and my coat already on, I just felt tired of being needed in ways that had nothing to do with being loved. We've already booked the resort. We told the kids they'd be spending Christmas with you. What are we supposed to do now? I suppose you'll have to figure it out, I said. And there was no anger in my voice, no satisfaction, just a kind of calm resignation. You're all adults, Sarah. You have spouses, you have resources, you have each other. You'll manage. This is unbelievable. Now there was anger in her voice, the kind of righteous indignation people feel when their convenience is disrupted. Mom, you can't just abandon us right before Christmas. What about tradition? What about the kids? They'll be heartbroken. Will they? I asked quietly. Or will they be disappointed that their free babysitter isn't available? There's a difference, sweetheart, and I think it's time we all acknowledged that. Before she could respond, before she could guilt me or manipulate me or say whatever she was winding up to say, I ended the call and turned off my phone. Just like that. 70 years old and I just hung up on my daughter, turned off my phone, and prepared to walk out of my own house on December 19th, leaving no forwarding address, no itinerary, no way for them to reach me and drag me back into the role I'd played for too long. Do you know what that felt like? It felt like breathing for the first time in decades. Like someone had removed a weight from my chest that I'd gotten so used to I'd forgotten it was even there. But it also felt terrifying, like I was doing something unforgivable, something that good mothers and good grandmothers never do. I stood in my living room, the same living room where I'd hosted countless holidays, wiped countless tears, settled countless arguments, and I looked around at all the photos on the walls, all the evidence of a life spent in service of other people. And then I picked up my suitcase, walked out the front door, and locked it behind me without looking back. The cab driver was a young man, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Where to, ma'am?" he asked, and I gave him the address of the rental car place. "Going somewhere nice for the holidays?" he asked, making conversation as he pulled away from my house that suddenly looked smaller in the rearview mirror, less significant, like it was already fading into my past. "The beach," I told him, and saying it out loud made it real, made it impossible to take back. "I'm going to the beach for Christmas." "That sounds wonderful," he said, genuine warmth in his voice. "My grandmother does that every year. Says she's tired of cold weather and family drama. Good for you, taking time for yourself." Taking time for myself. What a concept. What a radical, almost revolutionary concept for a woman my age, from my generation, where we were raised to believe that self-care was selfish, that putting yourself first meant you were a bad mother, a bad wife, a bad woman. But sitting in that cab, watching my neighborhood roll past, the houses decorated with lights, the inflatable Santas and reindeer, all the evidence of normal families having normal Christmases, I realized that I'd never actually tested that belief. I just accepted it as truth and built my entire life around it. By the time I got to Paula's beach condo, a 3-hour drive that I made in a rental car with the radio turned up loud, singing along to songs I hadn't heard in years, it was mid-afternoon, and the sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple that took my breath away. The condo was small but perfect. One bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a living room with huge windows that looked right out onto the ocean. I could hear the waves from inside, that constant rhythm of water meeting shore, and something inside me that had been clenched tight for decades started to relax. I unpacked my suitcase, hung up my clothes, arranged my medications on the bathroom counter. Then I made myself a cup of tea, just for me, not for anyone else, not because someone else wanted one. And I sat on the little balcony wrapped in a blanket, watching the ocean turn dark as the sun disappeared completely. My phone was still off, sitting in my purse like a live grenade that I was afraid to acknowledge. I knew what would be waiting for me when I turned it on. Calls from Sarah, from Mark, probably from their spouses too, maybe even from the older grandkids who were old enough to use phones. Messages ranging from concerned to angry to manipulative, all designed to make me feel guilty, to make me come home, to make me be the person they needed me to be instead of the person I actually was. But right then, sitting on that balcony with the ocean singing its ancient song and the salt air filling my lungs, I didn't care about any of that. For the first time in my entire adult life, I was alone, truly alone, and it didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful, felt like freedom. Are you still with me, sweetheart? Take a breath right now, a deep one, and let it out slowly. Sometimes we forget to breathe when we're listening to something that resonates deep in our bones. I'm here with you, and I understand if this story is bringing up feelings you've been pushing down. If it's making you think about your own life, your own sacrifices, your own moments of being taken for granted. That's okay. Feel it. Let yourself feel it. Because the first step to changing anything is acknowledging that it needs to be changed. Christmas Eve arrived warm and sunny, which felt wrong at first. Christmas is supposed to be cold, right? Snow and hot cocoa and frost on the windows? But there I was sitting on a beach in Florida, wearing shorts and a tank top, watching families build sandcastles and children splash in the waves. And it was the most right I'd felt in years. I'd turned on my phone that morning. Couldn't avoid it forever, I suppose. And the screen had lit up like a Christmas tree with notifications. 63 missed calls, 47 text messages, 6 voicemails, all from my family, all escalating in tone from, "Mom, please call us back, we're worried too. This is incredibly selfish and you should be ashamed of yourself." That last one was from Mark, and it stung. I won't lie to you, it stung like alcohol on an open wound, because I'd raised that boy to be better than that. Raised him to understand that people's feelings matter, that words have weight. But I'd also raised him in a house where my feelings didn't seem to matter much, where I modeled self-sacrifice and martyrdom and called it love. So maybe this was my fault too. Maybe I taught him by example that treating me this way was acceptable. The thought sat heavy in my stomach as I scrolled through the messages, each one a little dagger of guilt designed to bring me home. Sarah's messages were more manipulative, weaponizing the grandchildren in a way that was almost impressive in its calculated cruelty. "The kids are crying, Mom. They don't understand why Grandma abandoned them on Christmas. Tommy asked me if you don't love him anymore. How am I supposed to answer that? I hope you're happy wherever you are, knowing that you've ruined Christmas for 8 innocent children who never did anything to deserve this." But here's what Sarah didn't mention in any of those messages: that they'd been planning to dump those 8 children on me without asking, without compensating me, without even acknowledging that watching 8 kids for 3 days is work. Hard work, exhausting work, the kind of work that people normally pay good money for. She didn't mention that their ruined Christmas was only ruined because I wasn't available to make it easy for them, that their vacation plans had to be canceled not because I was being unreasonable but because they'd built those plans on the assumption that I had no life, no needs, no right to my own time. I'm not going to tell you I felt no guilt because that would be a lie. The guilt was there, sitting in my chest like a stone, whispering all the old messages. Good mothers don't do this. Family is everything. Your needs don't matter as much as theirs. You're being selfish. You're going to regret this. But alongside that guilt was something else. Something I hadn't felt in so long I almost didn't recognize it. Anger. Clean, bright, righteous anger at the way I'd been treated. At the way my time and energy had been taken for granted. At the way I'd been reduced to a service provider instead of being seen as a whole person with feelings and limits and dreams of her own. Where are you in your own journey right now, watching this? Are you still in the phase where you say yes to everything? Where you sacrifice yourself on the altar of family obligation and tell yourself it's noble? Or have you reached that breaking point where you realize that setting yourself on fire to keep others warm doesn't make you a good person? It just makes you burned? I'm not here to tell you what to do, sweetheart. I'm just here to tell you what I did, and hope that maybe it gives you permission to make your own choices, whatever those choices might be. I spent Christmas Eve walking on the beach, watching the sun set in a blaze of glory that no Christmas lights could ever match. I bought myself dinner at a little seafood restaurant where the waitress was kind and didn't ask why I was alone on Christmas Eve, where I ordered exactly what I wanted without having to accommodate anyone else's dietary restrictions or preferences. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, listening to the conversations around me. Families laughing, couples holding hands, groups of friends celebrating together, and I didn't feel lonely. I felt present. I felt real. I felt like myself. Back at the condo, I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the balcony again, wrapped in a blanket even though the air was warm, just because I liked the weight of it. I thought about Christmases past, about all the years I'd spent cooking and cleaning and organizing and managing everyone else's happiness, while my own just quietly slipped away unnoticed. I thought about my husband, gone 8 years now, and wondered what he would think of what I'd done. Would he be proud of me for finally standing up for myself? Or would he be disappointed that I'd abandoned the family? I'd like to think he'd be proud, but the truth is, he'd been part of the problem too. Expecting dinner on the table and a clean house and emotional labor I provided without complaint because that's what wives did, what mothers did. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, and I woke up naturally. No alarm, no children jumping on the bed. No urgent phone calls about last-minute emergencies that only I could solve. I made coffee, just enough for me, and took it out to the balcony where the ocean was calm and glittering in the morning sun. My phone was still off, still sitting in my purse like Pandora's box, and I decided it could stay there for one more day. Whatever chaos was happening back home, whatever guilt trips were being prepared, whatever consequences were waiting for me, they could wait until tomorrow. Today was mine. I walked on the beach for hours that Christmas morning, collecting shells and watching birds dive for fish and feeling the sand between my toes. I saw other people, some clearly tourists like me, others maybe locals who'd made the beach part of their Christmas tradition, and we exchanged smiles and Merry Christmas greetings that felt more genuine than any of the obligatory holiday interactions I'd had in years. Nobody knew me here, nobody expected anything from me, nobody needed me to be anything other than what I was. An old woman enjoying a day at the beach. Around noon I went back to the condo and made myself lunch, a simple sandwich, nothing fancy, and ate it while reading my book, the one I'd packed but hadn't touched yet. It was a mystery novel, something light and entertaining, and I got so absorbed in it that when I finally looked up, 3 hours had passed and I hadn't thought about my family once. 3 hours. That might not sound like much to you, but for me it was revolutionary. For 40 years, my thoughts had been consumed by other people's needs and wants and schedules. Even when they weren't physically present, they occupied space in my mind, planning and worrying and trying to anticipate what they might need from me next. But those 3 hours reading on Christmas afternoon, my mind was quiet. My own. Mine. Are you crying yet, sweetheart? It's okay if you are. I cried too, sitting there on that couch with my book in my lap, realizing how much of my life I'd given away without even being asked. They weren't tears of regret exactly, more like tears of recognition, of grief for the woman I could have been if I'd learned this lesson 40 years ago instead of at 70. But there was also relief in those tears because at least I'd learned it now. At least I hadn't died without ever knowing what it felt like to choose myself. That evening I watched the sunset again. It never got old, that daily miracle of light and color. And I made a decision. I was going to turn on my phone the next morning and deal with whatever waited for me, but I wasn't going to apologize. I wasn't going to justify myself or defend my choices or beg for forgiveness. I was going to state my boundaries clearly and calmly, and if they couldn't accept those boundaries, well, that would tell me everything I needed to know about what our relationship really was. The funny thing about getting old is that you start to run out of reasons to care what people think. When you're young, you're so worried about being liked, about fitting in, about meeting expectations. But at 70, when you can see the end of your life somewhere on the horizon, not immediate hopefully, but no longer so far away it's abstract, you start to realize that the only opinion that really matters is your own. When I'm lying on my deathbed someday, am I going to regret this Christmas? Am I going to wish I'd stayed home and let them use me one more time? Or am I going to be glad I finally chose myself, even if it was late, even if it came with consequences? I think you know the answer to that. On December 26th, I finally turned on my phone and called Paula. Not my kids, Paula. Because I needed to talk to someone who would understand without judging, who would listen without trying to fix me or change my mind. Margaret, she answered on the first ring, her voice thick with relief. Thank God. I've been so worried. Your kids have been calling me. You know, trying to get me to tell them where you are. What did you tell them? I asked, curious despite myself. I told them you were safe and that was all they needed to know, she said firmly. I told them you were an adult who deserved privacy, and that if they were so concerned about you, maybe they should have treated you better when they had the chance. God, I love Paula. She's been my friend for 35 years, since our kids were in elementary school together, and she's never been afraid to speak truth even when it's uncomfortable. I'm at the beach, I told her, because she deserved to know, because she'd given me this gift of space and time. I'm at your condo, and Paula, I haven't felt this good in years. Is that terrible? Is it terrible that I feel better away from my family than I do with them? Oh, honey, she sighed, and I could hear her settling into a chair, getting comfortable for a real conversation. It's not terrible at all. It's honest. And maybe that's what they need to hear, that you're not just an extension of them, that you're a person with feelings and limits. Have you talked to them yet? No, I admitted. I'm scared to. Not scared that they'll yell at me, I can handle that. Scared that they won't understand, that they'll just see this as me being selfish and difficult, that nothing will change even after this. Maybe nothing will change with them, Paula said gently. But something's already changed with you, hasn't it? You've remembered who you are, Margaret. You've remembered that you matter. And whatever happens next, you can't unlearn that. She was right, of course. I couldn't go back to being the woman I was before December 18th, Before I overheard that conversation, before I packed my suitcase and drove away from everything I'd ever known, that woman was gone, and good riddance to her. She'd been so busy taking care of everyone else that she'd forgotten to take care of herself. And that's not noble, it's just sad. After I hung up with Paula, I sat with my phone in my hands for a long time, staring at all those messages, all that guilt and manipulation and anger packaged as concern. And then I did something I'd never done before. I called a family meeting. Not in person, I wasn't ready for that yet, but via group video call scheduled for 7 o'clock that evening. We need to talk. I wrote in the family group chat that I'd been ignoring for a week. Everyone be available at 7. This is important. The hours leading up to that call felt like waiting for my own execution. My stomach churning with anxiety and my hands shaking every time I thought about what I needed to say. I practiced in the mirror, tried out different words and tones, attempted to anticipate their reactions and prepare my responses. But eventually, I realized that no amount of preparation would make this easy, so I might as well just be honest and let the chips fall where they may. At 7 o'clock, I opened my laptop and joined the video call, and suddenly there they all were. Sarah and her husband, Mark and his wife, all 4 of them staring at me through their screens with expressions ranging from worried to angry to confused. "Mom!" Sarah started immediately, her voice pitched high with stress. "Where have you been? Do you have any idea how worried we've been? We almost called the police." "I told you I was going to the beach," I said calmly, and I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded, how sure of myself I felt despite the anxiety still churning in my gut. "I told you I was taking a vacation by myself. That's exactly what I've been doing." "But you just left," Mark interjected, his face red with what looked like genuine anger. "You didn't tell us where you were staying, you turned off your phone, you didn't answer any of our messages. That's not normal, Mom. That's not okay." "You're right," I agreed, and I saw their faces shift slightly, surprised that I wasn't arguing. "It's not okay. But do you know what else isn't okay? Planning to leave 8 children with your 70-year-old mother for 3 days without asking her permission, without offering to pay her or even acknowledging that it's work, without caring whether she has plans or energy or interest in doing this for you. That's not okay either." Silence. You could have heard a pin drop through that video call, the kind of silence that means people are scrambling to figure out what to say, how to defend themselves. Finally, Sarah spoke up, her voice defensive. "We thought you'd be happy to have them. You're always saying you wish you saw the grandkids more. Seeing them and being solely responsible for them are 2 different things," I said. And I could feel old patterns trying to pull me back, trying to make me soften this, apologize for being too harsh, reassure them that it's okay, we can just forget about it. But I didn't. And even if I would have been happy to do it, you should have asked. You should have treated me like a person whose time and energy and preferences matter, not like a free resource that exists solely for your convenience. What are you feeling right now watching this? Is your heart racing like mine was during that call? Are you thinking about your own family, your own boundaries that you've never set because you were too scared of the consequences? I'm telling you this not to make you feel bad, but to show you that it's possible. It's possible to speak up, to set boundaries, to demand to be treated with respect even when it's terrifying, even when you're 70 years old and feel like maybe it's too late to start standing up for yourself. Mark's wife spoke up then, her tone conciliatory. "We didn't realize you felt this way, Margaret. If you told us you were upset, I shouldn't have to tell you that dumping 8 children on me without asking is inappropriate," I interrupted. And there was an edge to my voice now, years of suppressed frustration finally finding its way out. I shouldn't have to teach you as grown adults that your mother is a person who deserves consideration and respect. That's basic human decency. Not some special insight I failed to communicate. More silence. Then Sarah started crying. Not the genuine tears of remorse, but the manipulative crying that she'd learned worked on me when she was 5 years old. I can't believe you're doing this right now, she sobbed. It's the day after Christmas, and instead of being with your family, you're at the beach attacking us for what? For wanting to spend time together as siblings? For thinking our mom would enjoy spending the holiday with her grandchildren? Don't twist this, I said firmly. You weren't thinking about me enjoying anything. You were thinking about yourselves enjoying a vacation and needing someone to watch your kids so you could do that. And there's nothing wrong with wanting a vacation. But there's everything wrong with assuming I'd provide free childcare without being asked, without being appreciated, without even being acknowledged as a person in this equation. Do you see what I'm doing here, sweetheart? I'm not letting them rewrite the story, not letting them make me the villain when all I did was refuse to be taken for granted. That's important. When you set boundaries with people who are used to having none with you, they'll try every trick in the book to make you back down. Guilt, tears, anger, confusion, playing the victim. You have to stay firm. You have to remember why you're doing this. Mark took a different approach, his voice cold and clipped. So what do you want, Mom? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry we assumed you'd want to spend time with your grandchildren. I'm sorry we thought family meant something to you. Is that what you need to hear before you'll stop punishing us? I'm not punishing anyone, I said, and I felt tears building behind my own eyes now. But I blinked them back because I needed to finish this, needed to say what I'd come to say. I'm just trying to establish that I'm a person, not a service. I love you all, I love my grandchildren, but love doesn't mean I have to sacrifice my health, my energy, my peace of mind every time you decide you need something from me. I'm 70 years old. I have arthritis, I have high blood pressure, I get tired easily, and I deserve to have my limitations respected instead of ignored. Nobody's ignoring your limitations, Sarah protested, wiping her eyes dramatically. We've never asked you to do anything you couldn't handle. You were going to leave me alone with 8 children for 3 days, I said slowly, deliberately, making sure each word landed. The youngest is 3 years old. 3. Do you remember what 3-year-olds are like? Do you remember how exhausting they are even when you're 30, let alone 70? And you were going to leave me with 1 3-year-old, 2 5-year-olds, 3 8-year-olds, and 2 12-year-olds, all with different needs and schedules and personalities, and you expected me to feed them and entertain them and manage them and keep them safe for 72 hours straight by myself without help, and you thought that was reasonable. The silence that followed was different this time, heavier, more thoughtful, like maybe, just maybe, something was starting to sink in. Mark's wife, bless her heart, was the first to speak. When you put it like that, it does sound like a lot to ask. It is a lot to ask, I agreed. And if you'd asked, if you'd called me and said, Mom, we're thinking about taking a vacation over Christmas, would you be willing to watch the kids if we hired someone to help you? Or if we made sure you had support? Or if we at least acknowledged what a huge favor this would be? Then maybe we could have worked something out. But you didn't ask. You just assumed. And that assumption, that taking me for granted, that's what hurt the most. Are you still breathing, sweetheart? Remember to breathe. I know this is heavy. I know it's bringing up things that maybe you've been avoiding thinking about, but stay with me. We're almost through this part, and I promise you there's light at the end of this tunnel. Sarah had stopped crying now, and she looked small on the screen, deflated in a way that made her look younger than her 42 years. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Mom," she said quietly. We've always been able to count on you. For everything. And I guess we stopped thinking about what that cost you because you never complained, you never said no, you just always showed up." "I did always show up," I acknowledged. "And maybe that's partly my fault for never teaching you that I had limits, for never modeling self-care or boundaries or any of the things I should have been teaching you by example. But I'm teaching you now, even if it's 40 years too late. I'm teaching you that people, even mothers, even grandmothers, deserve to be treated with consideration and respect. I'm teaching you that relationships should be reciprocal, not just one person giving and giving until there's nothing left." "So what happens now?" Mark asked, and he sounded tired, genuinely tired, like this conversation had taken something out of him. "Are you coming home? Are we okay?" "I'm coming home tomorrow," I told them, and I felt the truth of those words settle into my bones. "But things are going to be different from now on. I'm not going to be available for last-minute babysitting. I'm not going to cook holiday dinners for 15 people by myself. I'm not going to say yes to every request just because I feel guilty saying no. I'm going to prioritize my health, my energy, my peace. And if that makes me selfish in your eyes, then I guess I'll have to learn to live with that." "You're not selfish," Mark's wife said, and there were tears in her eyes now, the genuine kind. "You're just finally taking care of yourself. And I'm sorry it took us so long to see that you needed to." The call ended shortly after that, with promises to talk more when I got home and figure things out as a family. I closed my laptop and sat in the quiet of the condo, listening to the ocean outside, feeling wrung out and exhausted but also strangely lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there until I set it down. I'd done it. I'd set boundaries with my family, spoken my truth, refused to back down even when they tried to guilt me and manipulate me, and make me feel like I was the one in the wrong. And I'd survived it. I was still here, still breathing, still whole. That night, I slept better than I had in years. I drove home on December 27th, taking my time, stopping at a little diner for lunch where the waitress called me Han, and didn't ask any questions when I ate alone. The drive gave me time to think, to process everything that had happened over the past 9 days, to prepare myself for whatever was waiting for me at home. I knew the hard part wasn't over. Setting boundaries is one thing, maintaining them is another entirely, especially with people who've had 40 years of practice ignoring them. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a few minutes, just looking at my house, this place that had been the center of my universe for so long. It looked the same as when I'd left it. Same beige siding, same red front door, same flower beds that needed weeding. But I felt different looking at it. It wasn't my whole world anymore. It was just a house, one place among many places, and I could leave it again if I needed to, if things went back to the way they were before. That knowledge that I could leave made coming home feel less like a trap and more like a choice. Sarah's car was in the driveway when I pulled up, which didn't surprise me. I'd expected at least one of them to be waiting, ready to have the real conversation now that I was home and couldn't escape by hanging up a phone or closing a laptop. I grabbed my suitcase from the trunk and walked up to my front door. And before I could even get my key in the lock, Sarah opened it from the inside. She looked terrible, exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. And my first instinct was to comfort her, to ask what was wrong, to fall right back into the pattern of putting her needs ahead of my own. But I didn't. I just said, "Hi, Sarah," and walked past her into my own house, setting down my suitcase in the entryway. "Mom," she started, and her voice was thick with emotion. "We need to talk." "I know," I said, heading toward the kitchen to make myself some tea. Because after a 3-hour drive, I needed tea, and my needs got to come first for once. "Do you want some tea?" She followed me into the kitchen, wringing her hands nervously. "No, I don't want tea. I want to understand what happened. I want to understand how we got to this point where you'd rather spend Christmas alone than with your family." I filled the kettle and set it on the stove before turning to face her. "I wasn't alone, Sarah. I was with myself. There's a difference. I pulled out a chair and sat down heavily, feeling every one of my 70 years in my aching knees and tired back. And I'd rather spend Christmas taking care of myself than being taken advantage of by people who say they love me, but treat me like unpaid help. Is that really what you think? She asked, and she looked genuinely hurt, which made this harder but didn't make it any less necessary. That we don't love you? That we just use you? I think you love me, I said carefully, choosing my words like I was walking through a minefield. But I also think you've gotten so used to me always being available, always saying yes, always putting your needs first, that you stopped seeing me as a person with my own life. When did you last ask me how I was doing, Sarah? Really ask and then wait to hear the answer? When did you last consider whether I might be tired or busy, or just need a break? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again, and I could see her actually thinking about it, scrolling back through memories trying to find an example. The fact that it was taking her this long told me everything I needed to know. I don't know, she finally admitted, sinking into the chair across from me. God, Mom, I really don't know. When did I become this person? When did I stop seeing you? I don't know, baby, I said gently, and I reached across the table to take her hand because even though I was angry, even though I was hurt, she was still my daughter and I still loved her. Maybe it happened gradually, so slowly neither of us noticed until it had gone too far. Maybe I enabled it by never saying no, by never setting boundaries, by teaching you through my actions that my needs didn't matter. But it doesn't matter how we got here. What matters is what we do now. The kettle started whistling and I got up to make my tea, moving slowly because my body was reminding me that I wasn't young anymore, that long drives and emotional conversations take a toll that they didn't used to. Sarah stayed quiet while I prepared my tea, and when I sat back down she was crying, really crying this time. Not the manipulative tears from the video call but genuine tears of remorse. I'm so sorry, Mom, she said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. You're right about everything. We were going to dump the kids on you without even asking. And when you weren't available, we acted like you'd done something wrong instead of taking responsibility for our own poor planning. And it's not just this Christmas. It's been years of this, hasn't it? Years of us taking and never giving back. Never asking what you need. Never considering that you might have limits. Yes, I said simply, because there was no point in softening it now. It's been years. How do we fix this? She asked, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. How do we make this right? Because I don't want to lose you, Mom. These past 9 days without you, not knowing if you were okay, wondering if you'd ever forgive us, it was awful. I realized how much I take you for granted, how much I just assume you'll always be there. And I hate that about myself. Where are you right now watching this? Are you hoping for a happy ending, for everything to be magically fixed by one conversation? Or are you realistic enough to know that decades of dysfunction don't get undone in an afternoon? I wish I could tell you that this one conversation fixed everything, that my family immediately changed their ways and started treating me with the respect I deserved. But life isn't a movie and real change takes time. I don't know if you can fix it, I told Sarah honestly. What I do know is that things can't go back to the way they were. I can't go back to being the person who sacrifices everything for everyone else's comfort. I won't survive it, Sarah. Not physically, not emotionally, not spiritually. So if you want a relationship with me going forward, it has to be different. It has to be reciprocal. It has to acknowledge that I'm a person, not just a resource. Tell me how, she said urgently. Tell me what you need from me, and I'll do it. It's not about one grand gesture, I said, sipping my tea and feeling the warmth of it spread through my chest. It's about consistent, everyday acknowledgement that I matter. It's about asking instead of assuming. It's about accepting no without guilt tripping me. It's about sometimes, just sometimes, thinking about what I might need instead of only thinking about what you need from me. We talked for another hour, really talked in a way we hadn't in years. She told me about how stressed she'd been, how overwhelmed with work and kids and marriage, how she'd fallen into the trap of seeing me as the solution to all her problems instead of as someone who might have problems of my own. I told her about how invisible I'd felt, how exhausting it was to always be the giver and never the receiver, how scared I'd been to speak up because I didn't want to lose them, but how I'd realized that losing myself was worse than losing anything else. By the time she left, after helping me bring in my suitcase and making me promise to call her the next day, I was exhausted but also hopeful. Cautiously hopeful because one good conversation doesn't erase 40 years of patterns, but hopeful nonetheless that maybe, just maybe, this could be a turning point. Mark called that evening, and we had a similar conversation, though his was shorter and less emotional because that's just how Mark is. More reserved, more practical. But he apologized too, genuinely, and promised to do better. His wife texted me later with a heartfelt message about how my actions had made her think about her own mother. About how she'd been taking her for granted too. About how she was going to make changes in that relationship as well. The grandkids, well, they were kids and kids are resilient. The older ones were confused about why Grandma hadn't been there for Christmas, and I explained it to them in age-appropriate ways. Grandma needed a break, sweetie. Sometimes even grown-ups need time to rest and take care of themselves. The younger ones barely noticed I'd been gone, which should have hurt but actually felt freeing somehow. Proof that the world kept turning even without me at the center of it. What I learned during those 9 days away, and in the weeks that followed, is that you can't change other people, you can only change yourself and how you respond to them. I learned that setting boundaries feels terrible at first, like you're being selfish and mean and everything you were taught a good woman should never be. But then it starts to feel necessary, and then, if you stick with it long enough, it starts to feel good, like you're finally treating yourself with the same kindness and consideration you've always shown everyone else. I learned that people will test your boundaries, especially at first, because they're hoping you'll crack and go back to being the person you were before. Sarah called the next week asking if I could watch the kids for just a few hours while she went to an appointment, and when I said no, kindly but firmly no, she was surprised. She'd thought maybe the whole Christmas thing was just a one-time reaction, not a permanent change. But I held firm, and eventually, she found another solution. And the world didn't end. I learned that taking care of yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sustainable. You can't pour from an empty cup, as the saying goes, and my cup had been empty for years. I'd been running on fumes and calling it love, destroying myself slowly and calling it sacrifice. Now I was learning to fill my own cup first, and surprisingly, I had more to give to others when I wasn't completely depleted. And I learned that it's never too late to change. Never too late to stand up for yourself. Never too late to demand better treatment from the people who claim to love you. 70 years old, and I was finally learning lessons I should have learned at 17, but better late than never, right? So here I am now, sweetheart. Several weeks after that Christmas that changed everything, and I'm different. My house is quieter. Not because my family abandoned me, but because I'm not constantly hosting and cooking and cleaning up after everyone. I see my grandchildren regularly, but on terms that work for me, not just terms that are convenient for their parents. I say no more often than I say yes, and while it still feels uncomfortable sometimes, it also feels necessary and right. I'm taking a painting class. Something I've always wanted to do but never had time for because I was too busy doing things for everyone else. I'm reading books, actual books, multiple chapters at a time without interruption. I'm sleeping better, eating better, feeling better, because I'm finally treating myself like someone who matters. And you know what? My family adjusted. They had to figure out how to solve their own problems instead of automatically turning to me, and it was good for them. It taught them resilience, self-sufficiency, creativity, and problem-solving. It taught them that I'm a person, not a service. It taught them that if they want me in their lives, they have to treat me with respect. Are you thinking about your own life right now? About the ways you sacrifice yourself, the ways you're taken for granted, the boundaries you need to set but haven't because you're scared? I'm telling you this story not to tell you what to do. That's your decision, your life, your choice, but to tell you that it's possible. Change is possible. Choosing yourself is possible. Even at 70, even after decades of putting everyone else first, even when it feels impossible and terrifying and like you're breaking every rule you've ever been taught about being a good woman, a good mother, a good grandmother, it's possible. That Christmas at the beach didn't solve all my problems, didn't magically fix 40 years of dysfunction, didn't transform my family overnight into the respectful, considerate people I wish they'd always been. But it did solve one crucial problem. It reminded me that I exist, that I matter, that I deserve to take up space in my own life. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Thank you for listening to my story, sweetheart. Wherever you are in this world, whatever you're going through right now, I hope it gave you something, permission maybe, or validation, or just the comfort of knowing you're not alone in feeling invisible, in feeling taken for granted, in feeling like maybe, just maybe, it's time to choose yourself for once. You matter. Your needs matter. Your peace matters. Don't wait until you're 70 to figure that out. Start now, today, this minute. Set one boundary. Say one no. Choose yourself one time and see how it feels. I promise you it feels like freedom.